HOA Karen mocked my elderly dad's uniform, didn't know my aunt runs the Dutch. The community center was buzzing that Saturday morning, a humid haze settling over the parking lot where my dad, all 72 years of him, stood proud in his security guard uniform. His badge glinted faintly under the sun, a small beacon of his quiet dignity. Then came Karen, her voice slicing through the chatter like a knife. "Look at this geezer playing dress up. What's that uniform? Dollar store security." The crowd froze. My dad's shoulders stiffened, but he kept his eyes forward, like he always did when life threw punches. I felt my blood boil, standing there with a stack of flyers for the neighborhood fundraiser. Karen, our HOA's self-appointed queen, had been terrorizing the block for years. But this mocking my dad, who'd worked double shifts to keep us afloat after Mom passed, that was a line she shouldn't have crossed. Dad's uniform wasn't flashy, faded navy, a bit loose on his wiry frame, but it was his. He'd taken the job at the community center after retiring from the factory, not for the paycheck, but for the purpose. He'd walk the grounds, tip his cap to kids, and make sure the place stayed safe. To Karen, though, he was just an old man in a cheap outfit, someone to belittle for clout at the HOA meeting. She stood there in her pristine white sundress, her arms crossed, smirking like she just won a debate. "Karen, back off," I snapped. Stepping between her and Dad, my voice shook. But I didn't care. He's doing his job. "What's yours?" Harassing people. Her eyes narrowed. That trademark Karen glare. "Oh, honey, I'm just keeping standards up. This neighborhood doesn't need a rent-a-cop embarrassing us." She gestured at Dad's uniform, her manicured nails flashing. A few onlookers snickered, egging her on. I could see Dad's jaw tighten, but he stayed silent, always the bigger person. That's when things started spiraling. Karen wasn't just content with words. Over the next week, she escalated. She filed complaints with the HOA, claiming Dad's unprofessional appearance was a safety hazard. She rallied her clique other busybodies with too much time and not enough sense to petition for his removal. She even started parking her oversized SUV in Dad's designated spot at the community center, forcing him to hobble across the lot on his bad knee. Each time I saw him limp back to his old pickup truck, my anger grew. But Dad just shrugged it off. "Let her have her fun. Mia," he'd say. "Folks like that burn themselves out." I wasn't so patient. I started documenting everything: her complaints, her parking stunts, the way she'd linger near Dad's post, whispering to her friends while pointing at him. I wasn't sure what I'd do with it, but I knew Karen needed to be stopped. She wasn't just bullying Dad, she was trying to erase his dignity, piece by piece. Then came the twist I didn't see coming. At the next HOA meeting, Karen showed up with a new ally, Mr. Thompson, a retired lawyer who'd just moved in. He was all slick smiles and polished loafers, the kind of guy who thought he could charm his way into power. Karen introduced him as her legal consultant, claiming he'd help formalize the case against Dad. Thompson stood up, adjusting his tie, and launched into a speech about community standards and professionalism. He even had the nerve to call Dad's uniform a mockery of security. I was fuming, but then I noticed someone else in the room. Mrs. Carter, the quiet widow who lived down the street. She'd always been kind to Dad, bringing him coffee during his shifts. She raised her hand, her voice soft but steady. "I've got something to say," she began. "I've known George, your dad, for years. He's not just a guard. He's the reason I feel safe walking home at night." "Karen, you don't speak for all of us." The room shifted. A few neighbors nodded, and Karen's smirk faltered. Thompson tried to regain control, but Mrs. Carter wasn't done. "And another thing," she said, her eyes locking on Karen. "I saw you hit George's truck in the parking lot last week. You didn't even leave a note." Gasps rippled through the crowd. I froze. Dad's truck, the one he'd nursed for 20 years, had shown up with a dented hood and a cracked windshield a few days ago. He'd assumed it was a random accident, but Mrs. Carter's words lit a fire in me. Karen's face turned beet red. "That's absurd," she sputtered. "I'd never." But Mrs. Carter pulled out her phone, showing blurry but damning photos of Karen's SUV scraping Dad's truck. The crowd erupted in murmurs. Thompson, suddenly less confident, started shuffling papers. I could feel the tide turning, but Karen wasn't going down without a fight. The next day, she doubled down. She posted on the neighborhood's social media group, calling Dad negligent and claiming his truck was an eyesore that deserved the damage. She even suggested he'd faked the incident for sympathy. That was the last straw. I wasn't just angry anymore, I was livid. Karen had crossed into outright lies, and she was dragging Dad's name through the mud. I knew I had to do something, but I didn't expect the answer to come from family. Enter my Aunt Clara. She's not the kind of person you notice right away, quiet, unassuming, always in a tailored suit. But Aunt Clara is a force. She's a senior official at the Department of Justice, handling cases that make headlines. I hadn't told her about the Karen situation. I didn't want to bother her. But when I mentioned the truck incident in passing during a family dinner, her eyes sharpened. "Mia," she said, setting down her fork, "tell me everything." I spilled it all. Karen's mockery, the HOA complaints, the truck. Aunt Clara listened, her face unreadable. When I finished, she said simply, "I'll handle it." I didn't know what that meant, but I trusted her. 2 days later, Karen's world started to crumble. It started with a letter from the community center's board, informing Karen that her complaints against Dad were baseless and had been dismissed. Then came a formal notice from the HOA, warning her about defamatory conduct and vandalism. Karen, predictably, lost it. She stormed into the community center, demanding to speak to the board. That's when Aunt Clara showed up. The confrontation happened in the parking lot, right by Dad's battered truck. Karen was in mid-rant, waving her arms, when Aunt Clara stepped out of her black sedan. The crowd parted like she was royalty. "Karen Mitchell." Aunt Clara's voice was calm but cut like steel. Karen froze, her bravado shrinking. "I'm Clara Nguyen, DOJ. I understand you've been harassing my brother and damaging his property." Karen's mouth opened, then closed. She tried to laugh it off. "This is ridiculous." "I didn't." Aunt Clara held up a hand, silencing her. "We have witnesses, photos, and a police report. You're looking at charges for vandalism and defamation. I suggest you think carefully about your next move." The crowd was dead silent. Dad stood beside me, his eyes wide but proud. Karen's face crumpled, her usual swagger gone. Thompson, who'd been lurking nearby, slipped away without a word. Aunt Clara handed Karen a business card. "My office will be in touch. I'd recommend getting a lawyer." Then she turned to Dad, her expression softening. "George, let's get that truck fixed." Karen tried to salvage her reputation, posting a half-hearted apology online, but it was too late. The neighborhood turned on her. People shared stories of her past bullying, fining a single mom for a messy lawn, shaming a kid for skateboarding. The HOA voted her out as president, and the community center banned her from events. Her SUV, once parked so arrogantly, now sat in her driveway, untouched. Rumor had it she was selling her house, unable to face the stairs. Dad, meanwhile, got a new uniform from the community center, a gift from the board. He didn't gloat, he never would, but I caught him smiling more, tipping his cap to neighbors who now greeted him like a hero. Mrs. Carter even baked him a pie, her way of saying thanks for keeping the neighborhood safe. As for me, I learned something. Bullies like Karen thrive on power, but they crumble when faced with real consequences. Aunt Clara didn't just win a fight, she showed me that justice, when it hits hard. Dad's truck is back on the road, shinier than ever. And every time I see it, I'm reminded, don't mess with family. What do you think? Did Karen get what she deserved? Or should she have gotten a second chance? Share your thoughts below.